Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Hit the bell icon button so that you don't miss out any tutorial.
Hello everyone, welcome. This is a new lecture in your course Linux for Absolute Beginners by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed, and in this section of the course we are going to make a small lab in which we are going to see the different ways with which you can install Ubuntu as an example Linux system on your machine. The first method that we're going to use is the most common one, which is that you have a machine that is running another operating system, and of course Windows is one of the most common operating systems around. So I thought that the most common scenario in this case will be that you have a machine that is running Windows and you want to install Ubuntu side by side with Windows on the same machine. So we are going to see in the first part of this section how to install Ubuntu with Windows on the same machine. And in the second part of this section, we are going to see how you can install Ubuntu as the only operating system on your machine. Now, this is a virtual machine, of course. In order to show you in this presentation, I have a virtual machine, and inside it, I have a version of Windows. It is the latest version, currently version 10, Windows 10 Enterprise. And then you will have to do the following. First thing, you will have to go to Computer Management here. If you are running an older version of Windows, it's going to be the same sort of thing. The procedure that I'm going to discuss here works with Windows 10, 8, and 7. So it's basically the same thing. All what you have to do first is that you go to Disk Management. And here you're going to see different disks. If you have more than one disk, you will going to see them there. Or if you have more than one partition on your system, you're going to see them here. What we are interested in is the primary partition, the partition that is holding your C drive. This is the one that we are going to select. This is the one that we are going to work with. And that is because we need the partition on which Ubuntu or your Linux system to be installed. It has to be the primary partition of the computer for best results. In order not to get things messed up, it is highly recommended that you install the secondary operating system on the same primary partition. But since Windows has taken already all the disk space in this partition, we are going to have to shrink the volume in order to get some space for Ubuntu to be installed. So here I have the amount of space I want to reserve for Ubuntu. I'm going to keep it at 10 gigabytes. Okay, the whole drive is 40 gigabytes. I'm going to keep 10 only for Ubuntu, and the rest is going to be for Windows. Now I have 10 gigabytes of unallocated space on the primary partition C. Now let's close this. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to insert the Ubuntu CD inside my drive here. Of course, pretending that this is your drive, because I'm using here a virtual machine in order to show you. And I'm going to select Ubuntu 16.04 desktop. This is the latest version of Ubuntu at the time of this recording. Now press OK. And the moment I do that, I'm going to see that I have a CD drive that has been inserted. That's perfectly okay. Now I'm going to reboot the system. Now, the moment you reboot your system, you will have to press the key that is designated by your machine to enter the setup, the BIOS setup. Some machines have this key as F2, some other machines have this key as F8, some other types of machines have it F12. Whatever that key was, you have to press the key that makes you interrupt the boot sequence in order to select your boot device, either from the BIOS setup or from a screen like this one. In VirtualBox, and because this is a virtual machine, this key is F12. It is just getting me into the boot order, and I have to select that my boot device is going to be the CD-ROM and not the primary master or the IDE controller. As you can see here, this is the first option, and this is the default option that is gonna boot to the hard drive. But since the hard drive has no Ubuntu installed yet, it has the Windows as the primary operating system. I'll have to choose the CD. I'll press C in order to start the Ubuntu Live CD. And as you can see here, it is starting. This is the screen of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu has that advantage of that it is both a live CD and an installation CD. A live CD, if you haven't heard this term before, is an operating system, a full operating system that has been installed on a DVD. That means that you can run an entire operating system, as we are going to see now. You can run an entire operating system from the CD. So as you can see here, the screen, the system has entered. And now I have two options, either to try Ubuntu or install Ubuntu. Let's see what try Ubuntu gives us. And let's appreciate the idea of live CDs. It becomes very, very valuable if you have a system that is failing, for example, or that it cannot boot to the default operating system. You can use this live CD in order to fix the problem. For example, gain access to the disks of the computer. As you can see here, if I go to the file manager, you're gonna see here that I can access Windows 10 here. It is mounted as a drive. I can access all my files in Windows. As you can see here, this is my default user. Downloads and everything. So this is one of the excellent ways that you can rescue a failing system. Imagine that you have a failing operating system, whether it was Linux or Windows, and you can no longer boot into your default system. Using a live CD like this one, using a live CD like Ubuntu, you can gain access to your files, perhaps back them up or restore or move them to another media if you are sure that this system will have to be reinstalled again, or if you want this drive formatted. So this is an excellent way to rescue the files that you don't want to get wiped out in the reinstallation or the format process. Additionally, you can even access the internet from this live CD. Now you can have a computer that has a hard drive that is just bare metal, and without installing any operating system, you can just put in the live CD and have access to almost all the programs that Ubuntu has. This is the internet browser, Firefox, and this is LibreOffice Writer, Calc, and Impress, the ones that we have talked about in the previous section, which comes bundled with Ubuntu, and we're going to talk about them more deeply in future sections. So that's it. This is the live CD, and this is how you can access your system. And one of the most important things that you can do with the live CD, of course, is the disk utility, in which you can really appreciate the Ubuntu live CD here, because you can fix hard drive problems. Let's say, for example, you have a failing disk that needs to be fixed, for example, or repartitioned, or any hard disk related task done to it. You can enter this disk utility and do pretty much anything you want with the drive. You can reformat it, you can repartition it, and so on. Now, enough of talking about live CD. Let's get to install Ubuntu as my secondary operating system on this machine. I'm going to double click on Install Ubuntu 16.04 LTS, which stands for Long Time Support, and let the installer launch. Here you're going to choose your language, and Ubuntu is known, or is very well known, by the fact that it supports pretty much all the known languages to humankind. As you can see here, these are a lot of languages that you can have your installation and your operating system working in. We're going to choose English. Press continue. And here you have the option to download updates while installing Ubuntu. And this may become handy because instead of installing Ubuntu and then you will have to go in and update the repositories and upgrade all the packages that you have installed, you have here the option to automatically download and install the updates while you are installing Ubuntu. The second option, which reads install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, Flash, MP3, and other media, this is exactly what we have talked about in the previous section. If you have a look here at this text in small font, the software is subject to license terms included with its documents. Some is proprietary, and that is what we said, is that Linux is not only a kernel, it is a kernel and a bunch of programs that get bundled with it. Not all those programs get shipped under the GPL license or the BSD or any of the open source licenses. Some of those are proprietary, as you can see here. And this does not mean that they cannot be shipped with an open source operating system or that they are not free. Okay, for example, here you have the MPEG layer 3 audio decoding technology, which is the decoder or the codec that is responsible for playing and encoding MP3 files. And this is not an open source license. This is a proprietary license, yet it gets shipped with Ubuntu, but it is optional because some people do not like to install proprietary licenses with the systems that they intend to, for example, modify. Sometimes you want to modify the software that you have since it's an open source one and then redistribute it under a different name. So if you have other proprietary software installed in the system that you intend to modify, then you cannot redistribute it because, of course, of the license that prevents you from doing this. I will uncheck both of those options. We just want to install Ubuntu in its simplest form. And here it's asking you to unmount /dev/sda. And this is the way Ubuntu and Linux in general refers to disk partitions. In Windows, partitions are referred to as C, D, E, F, G, and so on. But in Ubuntu and in Linux, it is being referred to as /dev, and /dev is the directory that contains the devices. We're gonna have a look at this directory in a later section in this course. And then SDA stands for SCSI disk. Okay, so this is SCSI disk. And then A, B, C, D, and E, and so on, it refers to the partition number or the partition location. So this is referring to the first partition or the first disk on the system. And if I have a number of partitions in this disk, they are going to be referred to as 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So it's going to be /dev/sda1 for the first partition on the first disk, sda2 for the second partition on the first disk, and so on. So since we have mounted this disk in order to show you that you can see the Windows files or the disk files when you open a live CD, and since Ubuntu needs to create partitions on this disk, it is asking you that it has to unmount this partition before continuing. Unmounting and unmounting are just, consider them for now as just when you plug in or plug out your USB flash disk into your system. This is exactly the same concept of mounting and unmounting drives in Linux. When you mount a drive, you have exclusive access to this device or this drive, and you want to make when you want to make any changes to it, you will have to unmount it first. So I'll press yes, please unmount it for me. And have a look here, it has already detected that you have Windows installed. You have Windows 10 installed, and it is giving you the default option of installing Ubuntu alongside Windows 10. The other options is that you can erase the whole disk and install Ubuntu. And of course, you can do something else. You can create and resize partitions yourself, and this is not recommended. I personally don't recommend this option. The recommended one is that you reduce the size of the Windows partition, just as we just did in Windows. We shrink the C partition, giving Ubuntu 10 gigabytes to be installed in them, and as soon as we start Ubuntu, it's gonna detect automatically that it will be installed alongside another operating system, and it even detected the type of this OS, which is Windows 10. If you chose something else, it will give you the opportunity to do the resize from inside Ubuntu, and this is not a recommended practice, and it may give you unexpected results. So we're gonna go with the recommended and the selected option. Yes, please install Ubuntu alongside with Windows 10. Now here it's giving me the notice of the changes that is going to be written to disks. It is going to create a partition for the system, and the type of the partition or the format of the partition is of type ext4, and ext4 is one of the disk formats used by Linux. It's just the same as when Windows used the NTFS or the FAT32 formats to format the disk, to format the disks that it works with. In Linux, it uses something called ext4, and there are also ext3 and ext2, but this is the most recent and most modern file system. It's ext4, and it's telling you that it's also going to create another swap partition. And swap in Linux is the same as the paging space in Windows. It is the space taken from the disk in order to assist the RAM when it runs out of space, and at the same time it holds the processes that are not frequently used in order just to give you the impression that you have more memory, and of course that will boost the performance. Anyway, it's going to create two partitions, ext4 as the partition for Ubuntu and another one for swap. Okay, I am fine with that. Here we're going to select our location. It has automatically selected Cairo, Egypt as my location, but of course I can select any other location on the map if I want to. This is just for my time zone. Let's continue. And here you have the option to select your keyboard. We are going to leave it at English and English US as the default keyboard. Now here you will have to enter your name. And this is very important because Ubuntu is one of the systems that takes user protection seriously. You are not allowed to log in with root, and root is like the administrator. Root is the most powerful user on the system. It's like the Windows administrator. It is the user who has all control on each and everything in Linux. So because of its importance and because of its sensitivity, Ubuntu does not allow you to log in as root. You'll have to log in with a normal user. Then from inside, you can execute the commands or the programs that needs root permission by using a program called sudo. as we are going to see later in this section and later in future sections in this course. So this is the primary user that is going to be used for logging into the system. This is your username. I'm going to choose a password for this user, and then I'm going to continue. Now these are all the information that I want to need it from you in order to start installation. It is going to install the system, and if we have instructed it to download and install the updates, it will connect to the internet and download the updates while it is installing. Okay, so now the installation has finished, and it is giving you the option either to continue using the live CD of Ubuntu or to restart and use the fully installed version. We're going to select restart. And as soon as the system restarts, you're going to see a screen like this. You have the first option as Ubuntu. This is the system that we have just installed. You have some other options, advanced options. We're not going to consider those now. Memory test. Okay, then Windows 10 loader. Now you have two systems installed beside each other, and both of them are functioning properly. You can select Ubuntu, and if you leave this screen without any selections for a few seconds, the default operating system will get started, which is Ubuntu. So you can either press enter, or you leave the system to boot automatically, or you can choose Windows if you want to. Now let's log on to our system. As you can see here, Ubuntu have been successfully installed. Okay, so let's now try to have a look at the other operating system to see whether or not it's gonna work. Now let's restart the system, and the moment you see this screen, if you want to select another operating system, you'll have to quickly move the arrow because it's gonna wait a few seconds before selecting the default operating system, which is Ubuntu. Now we're gonna select Windows, and as you can see here, Windows is loading fine, as if it was the primary and only operating system on your machine. Now in the next lecture, we are going to see how we can install Ubuntu as a standalone operating system without any other operating systems on the machine, which of course is a much simpler practice than this one. So see you next. Thank you. In this lecture, we are going to discuss how we can install Ubuntu as a standalone operating system on your machine. And in this lab, we are going to see how to install Ubuntu on a machine, on a physical machine, as well as how to install it on a virtual machine. And both of them actually have the very same procedure. Actually, working with a virtual machine might be a little harder than working with a physical machine, because on a physical machine you don't have to adjust anything. You just buy the hardware, insert the CD or the DVD in the drive, and proceed with the installation. But with a virtual machine, you will have to adjust the hardware first. So let's do just that. I am working here with VirtualBox, which is absolutely freeware. You can download it from the internet. So let's create a new machine from here, and we are gonna call it Ubuntu 2 because we already have another machine installed here. I'm using it in the labs in this course. So I'm gonna create a new one called Ubuntu 2, and of course type is Linux and version is Ubuntu 64-bit. VirtualBox has automatically selected those settings for us because we have chosen the name Ubuntu. Let's continue. And I do recommend that you give it at least 1 GB of memory in order to have a nice graphical interface. Now we're going to create a new hard disk, a new virtual hard disk. Choose the VDR virtual disk image, dynamically allocated, and the difference between dynamically allocated and fixed size is that this will save you some space, in that it will only take up the space used by the disk up to the limit that you have set. So here we have set the disk to be an 8 GB disk. This means that it cannot take any more space other than the 8 GB that you have allocated for it. If you have a fixed size, it will take the whole 8 GB whether or not the system is actually using them. So dynamically allocated, of course, is a much better choice to save some space. Let's create it. Now the next step is that you will have to insert the CD in order to start the installation, and the CD is present in the storage section here of the machine. As you can see here, this is the controller IDE, and as you can see here, the icon of the CD is present, which means that the IDE controller here is holding the CD drive. And all what you have to do now is press on this icon here, and you can either choose a file, choose a virtual disk virtual optical disk file, and you can browse for the ISO file of Ubuntu, or if you have already installed it before, you will find it here in the recently used files. So I already used Ubuntu 16.04 desktop-amd64.iso file, so I'm gonna just select it and I'm gonna press OK, and that's everything you need in order to start the installation. Just press on the start to start the machine, and you don't even have to press F12 and choose the boot device, because naturally you don't have any boot devices except the CD. The hard drive that you have does not contain any operating systems. Now, as you can see here, Ubuntu is starting the same way it did in the previous lecture when you have installed it side by side with Windows. And again, we have the screen whether to try or install Ubuntu. This time we're going to install it directly because we have seen already how we can use the live CD in the previous lecture. So you're going to click install. Okay, we have seen this before. We're going to download or install any third-party software. And now we have a different set of options. Because this is a bare new disk, it has no operating systems installed, then the only option you have, or the default option that you have, is to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. You're going to install Ubuntu on the whole disk because naturally you do not have any other operating systems installed. You can also have the option to encrypt the Ubuntu installation. This will make your hard disk encrypted, and of course this option was not available when you installed Ubuntu side by side with Windows, because encrypting the disk while Windows installed means that Windows will no longer be able to boot because the drive will get encrypted. And you also have this option, you can check here, and we're going to use the LVM with the new Ubuntu installation. LVM stands for Logical Volume Management. It is just a way of dynamically sizing your disks, because if you're going to have more than one partition, if you're going to have more than one file system for your files and directories, using LVM will allow you to dynamically resize those partitions to make, for example, the /var partition larger or smaller. You can shrink it, or you can expand it the way you like. But for the sake of demonstration, we'll keep it simple. We're not gonna use LVM, and we're not gonna encrypt the Ubuntu installation, and we're gonna just go ahead with the default setting. Again, it's giving us the notice that the following changes are gonna be done. Again, it's gonna create the SDA. It's gonna create the primary partition as an ext4 formatted file system, and the other partition is gonna be a swap. So let's continue with that. Okay, and the rest of the installation is exactly the same as it was in the previous lecture, so I'm gonna go through them quickly. Okay, now the installation is finished. I will click restart now, and notice that this time we're gonna be presented with the screen that gave us the options as to which operating system to boot with, because we only have one operating system installed now, which is Ubuntu. Sometimes we may need to reset the machine after the first installation. As you can see here, Ubuntu has been selected automatically because there is no other operating system installed. And let's log in. Okay, and now we have successfully installed Ubuntu. You can use whatever features you have. Now the system is ready. That brings us to the end of this section in Linux for Absolute Beginners by Eduonix. My name is Ahmed. I hope you enjoyed this section, and see you next. Thank you. In this section, we are going to discuss our new Linux desktop system. In the previous section, we have installed the system. We have shown you different ways of installing our example system, Ubuntu, whether as a standalone system on a virtual machine or side by side with your existing operating system, which was Windows. In this section, we are going to introduce Linux as a desktop environment. You're going to see how you can use the different programs that get shipped with the system and how to get the most out of it. So first of all, let's discuss briefly the desktop environment. A desktop environment is defined as tools that display icons and menus on the screen. They control the appearance, as well as they provide important programs and utilities that help you with common tasks like file management. A desktop environment is like the one you see here. This is our example system. This is Ubuntu. And as you can see here, this is what I mean by a desktop environment. If you recall from a previous lecture, when we pressed Alt-Control F1 and we had this text mode, this is not a graphical user environment. This is Okay, I entered the password incorrectly. This is called a text environment. This is not a GUI. This is not a desktop environment. You can interact with the system here using text mode. But this one, brought by Control-Alt F7, is the desktop environment. It is defined as those menus on the left, as you can see. This panel here containing like the current system time, the current language you're using, and of course, you can also place here some icons. You can double click on these icons and the programs will launch, or a specific functionality is going to be executed. So this collectively is called a desktop environment. And as mentioned before, Linux is different from other operating systems in that it can have a number of different desktop environments and not just one. So for example, I have installed here in this version of Ubuntu, I have installed a Plasma KDE environment. This is one of the environments, or one of the desktop environments that can be installed in Linux. If you want to have a look at it, you have to log out from your system in order to use a different desktop environment. I have just logged out of my system. And as you can see here, this is my name and this is the password. And inside this box, inside the login box, you can see here this icon on the right. I can click on this icon and it shows me a message, select desktop environment. Here I can select the Plasma KDE desktop environment that I have just installed. You have to install the desktop environment in order to be able to use it. So I have installed here the Plasma KDE desktop environment. If I type my password again using this environment, I will log in into a completely different desktop environment. It is the same system, it is the same programs and everything. However, I am logging into a different environment, as we're gonna see in a moment. Now, as you can see here, the environment has just loaded. Of course, it is completely different than the previous environment. The previous environment was having this shortcut bar here on the left. Here it is having this bar at the bottom, and it does not have the icons that were present. We have here the clock. It was placed here in the previous environment. Now it's placed here at the bottom. And you have a completely different set of, even the icons itself are drawn differently. As you can see here, you can add a widget, for example. If you've used an Android phone before, this is just a widget. I can add here a widget. I have added here 2 widgets for time. Okay, I've added here another widget for the battery status. Okay, so this is completely different than the previous desktop environment. And even when I try to log out, I will log out from a different place and by a different manner. I will click on this icon here and I can click leave. The previous one I had to click on an icon that was placed here, but that is a completely different desktop environment. And now I have logged out in this environment. I am logging back to my previous one, which is GNOME. I will have to change the environment here to be Ubuntu default instead of the Plasma KDE, and I am logging back to my original desktop environment. So switching between the environments is fairly easy. You can install as many environments as you like. Okay, and seems that one of the programs has crashed. It's okay. And now I'm back to my desktop environment, my original desktop environment. It's a matter of preference which environment to use. Now, the most important thing provided by any desktop environment is the ability to let you launch programs. So the presence of the desktop environment is originally intended for making it easy for you to launch the programs. So if you're in a text mode, some people find it fairly difficult to type in the name or the path of the program they want to launch. So the desktop environment makes it easier and more interactive for you to find and launch your programs. So how can you launch a program? In a desktop environment, you will find that the icon of the program can be placed either on the desktop itself, here, for example, or in this bar. As you can see here, this is, sometimes it's called the taskbar or the launch bar. It can also be present here in this panel. This is called a panel. Perhaps I should make this full screen to be clearer for you. So I can launch a program just by double-clicking its icon or single-clicking its icon like this. So I can launch Firefox from this launch bar like this by a single click on its icon. And in a moment, it is going to show up. This is Firefox. Also, you can right-click on your desktop to display a context menu. This is called a context menu. A context menu is the one that gets displayed when you right-click with your mouse on somewhere on your desktop or on an icon. So this is a context menu, and inside the context menu you can find a command like this which will open a program. Click on Open Terminal, and this will open this window. This window is called the terminal, and it is just a way by which you can interact with Ubuntu through the text interface, although you are inside the GUI interface or the desktop interface. This is just a way of opening a terminal window to Ubuntu. So this is a program. It's called a terminal, and it was opened by right-clicking on the desktop and clicking on Open Terminal. I can open another window here. Okay, and the most powerful way of opening programs in Ubuntu is by clicking on this icon, which was labeled Search Your Computer. You can just open the search button, and you can search for anything you want, not just the name of the program, but even its functionality. If you search for example, Word, as you can see here, Word is not the name of the program. This is called LibreOffice Writer, but Ubuntu is intelligent enough to give you the most appropriate program that you may need. So if I type here Word, I will find LibreOffice Writer, which of course is the counterpart of Microsoft Word. And here we go, it opens. Okay, I can type here terminal. As you can see here, this is the name of the program that is I've just opened here, which is called terminal. But if I'm coming from Windows environment and I decided to write CMD as the same way I write it in Microsoft Windows to open my CMD terminal, which looks similar like this one, I will be presented also by the terminal application. So this icon is your friend. You can type here whatever program name or program function that you might think of, and if it is installed, it will get displayed here. Calendar, for example, as you can see here, I have here the calendar that is installed in Ubuntu, and also have the Evolution, which is one of the main clients, and K-Organizer. All these programs provide a calendar application for you, and as you can see, although calendar is not the name of all of them except this one in the middle, it's not the name of Evolution. It's called Evolution Mailing Calendar, so so calendar here is part of the name, and here it is not even in the name, it's not even part of the name, but since it is one of the functions that K-Organizer provides, it was displayed for you. And of course, one of the most important tasks that any desktop environment should provide is a way to manage your files. If you're coming from a Windows environment, you sure have worked with the Windows Explorer in order to work with your files and folders, add files, copy them, paste them, rename them, delete them, create new files, and so on. Also, if you're coming from a Mac environment, you sure have worked with the Finder program, which provides fairly the same functionality. In Linux, we have a number of file management utilities, the most important one of which, or the most common one, is called Nautilus. Okay, so Nautilus can be opened by clicking on this icon on the left with the File Cabinet icon, and this will open this window for you, which contains the files and folders that you can work with. Now, the default folder that Nautilus opens for you is called the Home folder, and the Home folder is a place where the user places his or her own documents, movies, music files, project files, or anything related to the user. Anything that is not related to the system, anything that is related to the user should normally be placed here. So as you can see here inside the home, I have my desktop, my documents, my downloads, my music, pictures, public, templates, okay, and they are also displayed on the left-hand side of Nautilus, so the desktop can be accessed from here. The same way you can access them from here. This is just for your own convenience. You also have the trash, which is the equivalent of the recycle bin in Windows. Anything you delete will be placed in this directory called trash, where they can be restored again when necessary. And finally, we have here the network. And the network here, you can connect to other computers on the network. Of course, if they have shared directories, and of course, if they are in the same network as you are, perhaps this may need some configuration before it can work as expected. And if you click here on computer, you will be presented with all the files and folders on your computer. This is like the C drive in Windows. However, in Linux, as we said before, there is no concept of drive letters like C, D, E, and F. They are all placed in one large directory called root, from which other directories or other file systems stem. So here you have, these are system files. You should not play with these system files unless you know what you're doing. So this is the EDC, for example. It contains the configuration files. This is the home directory again of not only you, but all the users that are on the system. So if you have other users than myself, their names will be placed here, each in his own folder. You also have var and OPT. These are all system folders that should not be used in order to store any personal files. You should always store any personal files in this directory. And finally, from this, I can connect to server. You can connect to a server that provides access to files, for example, like a Samba server. And a Samba server is just a name for a for a server that shares files with Windows, or an NFS server. And an NFS server is just a server that provides file sharing for only Linux. Don't worry about these terms. We are going to discuss them later in this course, and you're going to know what is the difference between both. Just understand for the moment that connect to the server here will let you connect to a server using some protocol like Samba, for example. And in the next lecture, we're going to study some of the open source or free programs, and you're going to see for yourself the power of open source and programs that get bundled with Linux. So stay tuned. In this section, we are discussing the basic interaction with Linux and the programs that get bundled with a default Linux installation. We're going to have a look at web browsers for a start. Linux supports a large set of browsers. Actually, almost all browsers on the market are supported, except, of course, the Microsoft Internet Explorer, which is a proprietary browser supported only by Microsoft Windows systems because it gets installed with the Windows installation itself. But other than that, all other browsers are supported. Nearly all of them are supported. At least the well-known types are supported, like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and by the way, Mozilla Firefox is the default browser for the Ubuntu or for Linux in general, and Opera. Let's have a look here at our system again. This is Firefox. We have already seen it before. And we also have here a program called Epiphany Web Browser. It is now called Web, just Web. It is a lightweight browser. And we also have Chromium, which is an open source version of the famous Google Chrome browser. But since Google Chrome browser is a proprietary one, this one is a variant that is an open source web browser, so its code can be modified and redistributed, as we have mentioned in a previous section. And you can also download Google Chrome. So it has been downloaded, and notice here the easiness with which you can install third-party software. Now this has been downloaded from outside the repository. We're going to discuss repositories at the end of this section. So we are downloading from a third-party vendor here, which is Chrome. It is not from Ubuntu, it is from Google Chrome. And you can just install using the Ubuntu software program. It is going to install the software for you without you having to just enter the password of the root in order to start installation. You don't have to go to any text-based procedures in order to install software. It's going to be installed using the Ubuntu software program, and once installed, you are gonna see this icon turning to be called remove, so you can install and uninstall the software from this Ubuntu Software Center. And once you go to the Software Center and type Chrome, you will find that it is right beside the Chromium web browser. And you also have some less known web browsers, not as well known as Chrome and Firefox and Opera. You have something like Conqueror, and this is used in KDE environments. And you can also have something called Lynx. And Lynx is useful for testing websites because this is a text-based web browser. It can be used to test websites, like for example when you are inside a text environment. So let's get to our terminal, and we are going to install Lynx to show you how it can be used. apt get install Lynx. This is a program that is used to install software. And I have typed my root password, and it's telling me that it's gonna install 1 megabyte of archives. I press yes, and now Lynx has been installed. And this is another way to launch programs. We have learned that launching a program is by double-clicking its icon here, or in the context menu, or in a panel like this, or from the search box here. But also you can launch programs the old-fashioned way by just typing the program name like this. So I'll type Lynx, and Lynx is a text-based browser, as you can see here. I can type, for example, I can type Shift-G for Go, and I can type here, for example, www.google.com, press Enter, And as you can see, this is the text-based version of Google. Of course, it sounds nothing like the GUI mode Google, but this might become handy when, for example, you are working as a web developer and you want to develop applications or web applications that are accessible to those people who are having visual problems and they use text readers in order to browse the internet. So if the site can be viewed by a text-based website, by a text-based browser like Lynx, it can work correctly with text readers. Now our next topic here is the email clients. And an email client is defined as a program that allows you to connect to your inbox to read emails as well as send and receive emails using your email server. So if you are working with Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo Mail or any other of those free email providers, or if you are working with your corporate's email server, sometimes you can have an email client. Some providers like Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, for example, provide a web-based email. You can just launch your browser and log into your email account from that browser. They provide something called a cloud-based email service. But in corporates, more often than not, you'll have to use an email client in order to access your email server. So if you are using Linux, you have a number of email clients that can be used for this purpose. So for example, okay, let's close this Lynx browser and close the Chrome browser. Don't need it now. Okay, Linux has a number, or Ubuntu has a number of email clients. Let's say we want to have all the email clients that are installed. As we learned, we go to the search and we type email. As you can see here, I have two email programs or email clients. I have Evolution and I have Thunderbird. And Evolution, it's gonna launch now, okay. Evolution can be used to configure your email server. You write here your email, for example, Ahmed. For example, let's say that this is my email address. Okay, an organization, let's say Eduonix. And I'm gonna click next. It's going to look up my email default settings using my domain name. So here I've used Gmail, so it automatically grabbed my receiving and sending email settings. These settings are provided by your email providing servers like Google, for example, but Evolution is intelligent enough to grab those settings from the domain like Gmail. So here you are all set. You just have to click next, and this will make you access your Gmail account using Evolution. Of course, this email is not mine, just giving it as an example. So it won't work, but you get the point. And Thunderbird is going to work the same way. Thunderbird is developed by Mozilla, and it is closely related with Mozilla Firefox. And the same as Evolution, it is going to download the incoming and outgoing email settings for Gmail, because I have used here Gmail as my domain name. Okay, so it has automatically received those settings, and you are ready now to create an email account, and you're ready now to use Thunderbird in order to access your Gmail account. You can put here any domain name you have. It has a large database of different mail servers, so Gmail, Hotmail, Outlook, or Yahoo Mail, any of the well-known email addresses, email services will be understood by Thunderbird. And of course, you can manually configure your settings if you want to. For example, if you have a mail service that is not well known to Thunderbird, or if you want to manually configure those settings for any reason, for example, configure the server name or the port or anything, you can do this from this menu here. You can change all the settings you want to, and that will let you access your email via Thunderbird. We also have KMail for the KDE environments, and MUT. And MUT is a text-based email that becomes important when you want to view the email that is sent to you on the machine. I'll tell you how in a moment. Just let's install MUT. apt-get install MUT. Enter the password. Press yes. It's going to get 2 megabytes of data. And as you can see here, it is asking me to configure my mail server, and if I did not configure my mail server, it is going to be used for my local email, and that is exactly what I want. I want no configuration, and that is exactly what I want. I want it to be on local only. Okay, and okay. Press OK like this. Now, Linux machines send emails internally to the administrator, to root. These emails contain information about the system, for example, like the routine checks on the system and whether your file systems are full, or if something happens, or somebody were trying to break into the system, enter the password several times wrong or anything. These are sent through internal emails to the root user, and optionally it can be sent also to other users. So let's log in as root. We are now the root user. Don't worry, we're going to study users in a later section in this course. The root user is just the administrator of the system. It's just like the administrator account in Windows. And if I type mut, as you can see here, it's going to create a mailbox for me. And here I will receive all the mail messages that the system can send for me. If there are mail messages here, you can view them, you can even reply to them. And all these mail messages are internal. And as we said, mut can be configured to access outside mail, like Gmail for example. But of course, if you want to use a mail client for an outside mail, you better off use the Evolution or Thunderbird. But mut can be used internally, as we said, for internal messages that the system sends to the administrator. Now let's talk about Office programs. All users need some sort of Office programs, and when we say Office, we mean this suite that contains a word processor, a spreadsheet, a presentation, optionally a database application, and so on. So in Microsoft Windows, for example, you have the Microsoft Office suite that contains all those programs. In Linux, previously, we used to have something called OpenOffice or Apache OpenOffice. This is an Office suite that contained a program called Writer for a word processor, a Calc for spreadsheet, Impress for presentations, Base for database, and Draw for vector graphics, and Math for equations. But recently, a subset of this project, or a forked version of this project, a fork here means just another version of the project that has been developed by a different group of developers, but it shares most of the code. A subset of this project titled LibreOffice was created. It offered applications with the same names and functions as the above ones. It provided the Writer, the Calc, the Impress, Base, and so on. And it is currently the default Office suite in Linux. So if you have a look here, those programs that we have previously had a look at are part of the LibreOffice. You can see here LibreOffice 5. This is the word processor. As you can see here, it provides a rich set of functions that can be used by any word processor. You also have a spreadsheet called Calc. Same thing, it provides you with a spreadsheet, much the same like the Microsoft Excel. It has a lot of functions here that can use to create spreadsheets, the Impress presentations for presentations. And we also have other programs that are not here in this bar, like for example Base. As you can see here, it looks quite like Microsoft Access. As you can see here, you can create databases and work with them the way you like. You have Math, and Math can be used to write mathematical equations. As you can see here, all sorts of equations can be used. Okay. And Draw is a little like Microsoft Paint if you have worked with it before. You can create vector graphics like this. Okay. So all these come bundled with a standard installation of Ubuntu. You don't have to install it, you don't have to download it, or even pay for it. It just gets bundled with the default installation of Ubuntu. And LibreOffice and OpenOffice in general uses a format for documents called the ODF, which stands for Open Document Format. This is the standard format of documents, and this is an industry standard format. It is not a proprietary format, and it is portable among major Office applications. So if you create an ODF document in LibreOffice, it can be viewed and edited by Microsoft Word, and also LibreOffice understands the formats used by other Office suites like Microsoft Office, for example. So if you create a document using Word, you can view and edit this document in LibreOffice. However, not all functionality that can be present in a document can be ported safely into LibreOffice. So for example, if you use some of the complex functionality of Microsoft Word and created a very complex document, porting it to LibreOffice may not make it viewable or editable the way it was in Microsoft Word. So this is one of the problems of portability between proprietary formats and open source. Now in the next lecture, we're going to have a look at the rest of the bundled applications, and we're going to start with the multimedia, so stay tuned. In this section, we are discussing the programs that are bundled with Linux, or the programs that you can install in Linux and provide the same functionality that are provided by other commercial programs in other operating systems like Windows or Mac. And we are going to discuss now the various multimedia programs that you can use in Linux. First one of which is Audacity. Audacity is a program that lets you work with sound files. It resembles in its functionality the other commercial programs like SoundForge or Adobe Audition. You can edit a large variety of sound files and formats. You can also apply a lot of filters like noise reduction, as well as adding different sound effects. Now, Audacity can be installed from the software repository of Ubuntu. Let's have a look here at let's just write software, and you're gonna find the software repository of Ubuntu. If you type here in the search Audacity, just a few first words of the program, you will find that it is listed here. I have already installed it to save time, and this is the icon of Audacity. If you open it, let's just close the other programs that are open in order to give you a clearer view. Okay, so this is Audacity. As you can see here, you have a large variety of audio files that can be imported: WAV, MP3, OGG, FLAC, and others. If you've worked with any sound files before, you will notice this variety of formats. You have here many effects that you can add to your sound file. You can make noise reduction, for example, and transform between different sound formats. Okay, if you've been working with any multimedia sound files before, you will appreciate what Audacity has to offer. We also have a program called Blender. If you are into the 3D graphics world, you can use Blender to create amazing 3D graphics. And again, it is one of those free programs, but these programs, the Audacity and Blender, are not bundled with Ubuntu. You have to install them from the software repository, as you have seen in just a few moments ago. They are not bundled with Ubuntu, but they can be freely installed, downloaded, and installed using the software repository. So here, as you can see here, this is pretty much the same as other commercial 3D packages. Okay, I've never worked with 3D before, but as you can see here, it has a lot of options that you can use here. Okay, and it's completely free. And next we have GIMP, and GIMP is a very well-known graphics editing application that provides largely the same functions provided by famous graphics editing programs like Adobe Photoshop, for example. So you can see here are a lot of tools here that can be used to work with pictures and images. If you have worked with Adobe Photoshop before, you will know what these icons are for. So this is GIMP. Next we have ImageMagick, and ImageMagick is one of those programs that do not have a GUI, they do not have a graphical user interface, but they are very powerful in that they can be inserted in shell scripts. And we're going to study shell scripts later in this course. For the moment, just understand that a shell script is just a group of commands that are placed in a file, and when this file gets executed, all the commands inside it gets executed all at once. So an ImageMagick program can be inserted in a shell script, and it can be used to apply various effects like, for example, cropping or changing the file format of images. So imagine, for example, that you have a folder that contains like 1,000 images, and you want to change all those images, like for example from the JPG format to the PNG format for some reason. If you're going to open those images one by one and change their format one by one, you're going to spend a lot of time, and you're going to exert a lot of effort. But using ImageMagick, you can just make a shell script that will list all the files in the directory and make all the necessary changes, like for example changing the file type or even making any effects like cropping on those images, and in a matter of seconds the effects are going to be applied. So this is the power of shell scripting and the power of ImageMagick in Linux. And finally we have a program that is called Handbrake, and Handbrake is a program that can be used to convert video files from one format to another. So as you can see here, you can have here the source, the video source, can choose the video source you want to, and you can change it to another format. And of course, this is going to be very useful for people who are working in multimedia to produce, for example, DVDs, or those who produce videos that they want to be available on multiple devices, like for example, cell phones, and upload them on YouTube, for example. So they want various formats with various qualities and so on. So Handbrake is the program for this. And again, all these programs are free. You don't have to pay anything to download and use those programs. Now, in this part of the section, we are going to see how we can use Linux as a server. Now, the most power of Linux, my own personal opinion, comes when it is used as a server. That is because Linux is much more stable and secure than other operating systems. So it comes to no surprise that most of the web servers that power the internet websites are based on Unix or Linux. If you explore the servers that are used in Linux, let's first define what a server stands for, because I will use this term lots of times in this course. A server may refer to two things. It may refer to a program that runs in the background, and it is used to serve some service or function to a number of users, like hundreds or thousands or even millions of users at the same time. And a server also may refer to a machine, a whole machine that does this task. So if I say a web server, I may be referring to one of two things. Either the program that is used to serve websites to users, it is called a web server, or the machine that has a web server service installed on it, and it is also used to serve websites to users. So when it comes to Linux, and when I have a look at the web servers, for example, we have two major web server types: the Apache HTTPD server and the Nginx server. The Apache HTTPD is one of the most well-known web servers worldwide. It is very commonly used with languages like PHP and MySQL. MySQL is just one type of database, and PHP is one of the most well-known programming languages. Apache is most commonly used with these two components, PHP and MySQL, to create what's called a LAMP configuration. You will often hear this term if you are into web development. LAMP is an abbreviation for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. This configuration is largely used on the internet to power most of the web applications that we see around, like, for example, WordPress or even Facebook. Facebook uses PHP, and it is powered by Unix and Linux machines. And Nginx is relatively much newer than the Apache HTTPD. Apache was developed in the early 1995, while Nginx was released in 2002. So it's, as we said, relatively new. And Nginx can be used with PHP to serve dynamic web pages. However, system administrators sometimes prefer to work with Apache and Nginx at the same time, because Apache is most powerful when serving dynamic web pages, while Nginx is most powerful when serving static web pages. And the difference between static and dynamic simply is that a dynamic web page serves content on the fly. In other words, I can visit a web page, and this web page gets created when I visit it. So for example, I can visit a website that grabs my username, for example, from a database and then greets me with my name. So the page can give me a greeting like, for example, welcome Ahmed. And it knew my name because it grabbed it from a database. So Ahmed was created and written on the web page on the fly while I am visiting it. While a static web page is just, as the name implies, a static file. A static file is just a file that has been saved with some text in it in some location on the server, and it gets served to me when I visit this website. It is not created on the fly, nothing gets changed in the file, it's just served as it is. So Nginx is most powerful when serving that kind of files, the static web files, while Apache is most powerful when it comes to serving dynamic web pages, and dynamic web pages are created using the PHP language, as we have just discussed. So system administrators most of the time will have Nginx running side by side with Apache to get the most powerful features out of each of them. And of course, both of them run on Linux. Now let's have a look at software management. Throughout this section, we have already looked at different ways to install a package. We have looked at the Ubuntu Software Center. Here, let's have a look at it again. Just type software, and yes, it is that icon. This is the Ubuntu software program, and as you can see here, it is divided into different categories. You can here choose the category that fits you, like for example Office. You can find here all the programs that are available in the Ubuntu repository, and it also has subcategories. For example, let's see Finance. You have all these programs, Publishing, Project Management, and so on. So this is the software management GUI. But you also have something called apt-get, and you have seen me use it when I installed the MUT and the Lynx web browser. Let's have a look at it again, CMD or terminal, and this is apt-get. Okay, these are the options that are used with apt-get. And apt-get is used to download and install programs and packages from the repository. Now, what is a repository? A repository is just like a website that is used to download different packages. This website is maintained and secured by the vendor, so the Ubuntu website or repository is maintained by Ubuntu, It contains the packages that Ubuntu provides for its users, and they can be downloaded either using the Ubuntu software package, the GUI program that we have just seen, or using apt-get text-based program. And the power of apt-get or Ubuntu Software Center is that it takes care of program dependencies. So, for example, if you want to download a program and this program has some dependencies that need to be installed before this program can be fully functional, the apt-get program or the Ubuntu Software Center will take care of those dependencies. They will download and install those dependencies for you before installing the software package itself. But behind the scenes, apt-get and the Ubuntu Software Center depend on another program, another low-level program that is called dpkg. dpkg is used to install the software, but it is not intelligent as apt-get. It is just a low-level program that is used just to install one package. You just give it the package and it installs this package. It will not search for a package in the software repository. It will not search for dependencies. It will not download dependencies. It will just install this package. So it is a dumb command. It is a low-level command. However, it has to be used to install the package, so it is used behind the scenes with programs like apt-get and the Ubuntu Software Center to install different software and different dependencies. And if you're using the Red Hat variants, like for example Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, or Fedora, you will have a similar program to apt-get, which is called Yum. Of course, Yum is not installed here because this is a Debian package. Yum is used with Red Hat variants, and similarly, there is a low-level command in Red Hat variants that is called RPM. Okay, so RPM can be used by Yum in order to install single packages. You just pass in a single package to RPM and it will install it, just like the dpkg program installs a single package. So RPM and dpkg are low-level commands. They are used behind the scenes by the high-level commands like apt-get or yum in order to install packages on your system. And that brings us to the end of this section in Linux for Absolute Beginners by Eduonix.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, do give us a thumbs up and share it. Also check out amazing discounts and offers on our premium courses in the description below.